question is, how do you come up with the price, right? So let's do this. You've got a toothache, you go to a dentist. What's the right price to pull out your tooth? You ask the doctor, you say, Doc, how much does it cost to get my tooth pulled out? And the dentist says, $150. And you ask the dentist, how long does it take to pull out my tooth? And the guy says, about a couple of minutes. A couple of minutes, you're going to charge me $150? He goes, well, I can slowly yank it out and take an hour. So does it have anything to do with cost? Do you want it to have something to do with cost? That's essentially the heart of it, right? So there are some products. These are notorious products. We have the next computer, the Newton, the Google Glass. They're notoriously overpriced. I remember when the first next computer came up in my past life. And I remember looking at this beautiful baby. And it was, by the time you buy everything together, bundled, this was 1989, it was $9,000. 1989. It was way, way overpriced, right? Then you have, it's not working. No, it was on, it's now off. It's on, it worked when I was next to it. So then, we have the Philips interactive CD thing. That thing came out and it was launched at $1,000. And this is way back when. And it spurred the whole development of all the Nintendos, PlayStations, and all those gaming devices. We have Nokia. We have Euro Disney is another one that is fascinating, right? You would think the king of marketer knows how to price something. And when they launched Euro Disney, now it's Disneyland Paris, they way overpriced it to the point where they lost $1 million a day approximately until they finally did a test on what is the problem and what consumers think of it, and then they repriced it at the third year and then changed all the pricing in the fourth year. That's when they stopped making money. So you can really way overprice the product, but you can way underprice the product as well, right? So you have Audi. Audi's Q7. Audi thought we are going to sell about 70,000 units in a year, the first year. And so they priced it at 55,000 euros. Gasoline was expensive at the time. People were going for smaller cars. They figured that's the best they can do. They had the largest pre-order in Audi's history. They had 80,000 units. They couldn't make them fast enough. And conservative estimates is that they could make at least another 210 million euros. And they missed on that totally. And so there's a Suits BC900. They also way underpriced. It's not a good idea when your products fly out the window, because if you can't make them fast enough, people are really mad because they can't get the products. So you're not building any customer goodwill, and you're not reaping the value of your product. Another one is that Playmobil. Playmobil got sold so quickly that year they introduced in September, and then by Christmas, people were buying them off eBay for people who bought them to sell at a 35% premium. Something is wrong. So then we say, well, what is really the paradox in pricing a new product? So let's go through this for a second. Why are you innovating? Because you want to do something entirely different, correct? Something that's different, something that provides a new solution, something that is solving a problem that either didn't have a product before you do it totally different. So paradox number one is you pricing the new product like a me too. Because every innovation team I know, what they do immediately is they say, well, we got this product, so this is how different it is, and then they go, what are the best alternatives in the market? What do people want to buy? How much did they pay for this next thing? How much better we are than that other thing? So what are you doing when you do that? You created a new product, and then you start benchmarking. Against what? If you were to tell me that you're creating something new, why are you benchmarking? How many of you benchmark against something that is there and say, this is X% better? Well, you want to do something different, why are you benchmarking? Oops. So the whole idea of creating a new product and a new innovation is that you want to create a blue ocean for your product. But you're jumping right into the red ocean when you benchmark. Right? You look at something that's already in the market and go, what is my margin of difference? What is my improvement? The minute you do that, you're reducing your product into a me too. And then you go directly into the red ocean, you're fighting with the sharks. The second one is that I have a lot of new innovation companies that tell me, well, we're going to price our products based on variable cost. I said, well, do you know how much it costs you? Well, obviously we do, because we know. I said, how do you know how much it costs you? They said, well, how much it costs us to buy this stuff. I said, isn't that based on volume? They said, yeah. So we estimate how much we're going to sell, and then we find out the variable unit cost of that manufacturing cost. And that's already much better, because they're not unitizing fixed costs. The world over, one of the biggest problems in pricing is that you have conflicting objectives. Salespeople want to sell a lot. Product development people always want to put something else extra into the product. That's why we have the problem of over-featurization. How many functions, how many percent of the functions in your smartphone do you use? Cameras? 10%? Marketing people always say, well, let's market on value. But then there's cost. What is the most ridiculous thing I hear these days is, what is the ROI on my marketing dollars? And then you have the finance people going, what are the costs and what are our risks of the investments in marketing? We got serious problems, and so we don't know how to solve them. The world estimate is 70% of the products are priced on cost. How many of you know how much it costs you to make something? Do you? You do? Tell us. Enlighten me. How do you know? Speak up.
I can't say like every cost of every service is provided, but some services we break down the product procedure and count the time equivalents and as well as material. Always getting the cost.
So how many units of this widget are you making? And then you divide it, right?
Yeah, that's where it starts with the variable. That's the part we
So how do you find out how many units you're making?
we estimate, but the estimation can be quite off.
Well, yeah, you can be right off. The big manufacturers have been selling the product for decades are really off. You never know. So then you priced it on cost. You have to assume you know your cost. And even if you say, I bought it from a subcontractor manufacturer, and the manufacturer is charging me X for 5,000 units, the problem is how long are you holding on to this thing? How long are you financing holding on to this thing? We just never know. We don't know how much it actually costs you. So the idea that you are pricing on cost is kind of ridiculous. So we got this cost plus pricing. Every time I talk to a company, new, old, entrepreneurial, anything, they're always going, well, we want a certain margin. Based on what? Do you actually know? You have to know your cost to tell me what margin you're talking about. You may know approximately, but you don't actually know. So because you don't ever know how many units you're going to sell in what period, you actually don't know your accurate cost. And because of that, pricing to cost is a fallacy. It doesn't make sense. And how do you estimate your unit sales? Tell me. You're going to estimate, right? You've got a brand new product. How do you estimate? Where do you find the information? Something like it that was sold before? Or are you regressing into a Me Too again, right? I thought it was new. I thought you were doing something new. And then you turn around and go, what's sold before? I thought it was a new innovation. This is really irritating. Okay. So another fallacy is every entrepreneur I know, particularly people who start with something brand new, says we need to introduce lower at cost so that we have people who would buy these products to help us gain some traction in the market. Is that right? Can you do that? Oh. Okay. That's the diffusion of innovation curve. I suppose you're very familiar with the curve, right? So the idea is you have to find a way to cross the chasm, correct? So that you start gaining scale. What happens when you cross the chasm? You have scale, you have market acceptance, you have climbed up the learning curve and you started to climb down the learning curve, correct? So your cost of manufacturing would be lower. Am I wrong? So theoretically, you could afford to sell at a much lower price later. Right? Who are these people at the beginning?
Hipsters.
Excuse me?
Hipsters.
Exactly. The hipsters, the people who want to tinker with things, the people who like things, the people who would sell their car to get their hands on something new. Why are you pricing it low? Your cost is very high at the beginning. You have no experience in making it. You need people to forgive you a lot. They're willing to pay up the wazoo, and you want to price low? Hello. And if you price low at the beginning, you also have another problem, is that you set the expectation of your products at that level. It's very hard to lift it after that. Very hard to lift it after that. You have to introduce something totally new to justify an increase. You don't want to do that. So that's why pricing is a lot more complex than we think it is. How many of you think there's a formula to come up with a price? Good. Well, I should have asked you the question in the beginning. There are a lot of my students, participants in my workshops, and I teach at the Professional Pricing Society workshop 3 years, a conference three times a year. And these are all pricing managers from all different industries all over the world. And they all go, it's got to get easier. It's got to be easier. I said, you've been pricing for what? 10 years, 15 years, some of them 2 years, some of them only a few months, but some of them seasoned pricers, and they manage pricing. There's no formula for pricing. There are some guidelines, there are some things you should do under different circumstances, but the reality is it always starts with what is your market? That's a very loaded question, isn't it? What is your market? Whose problem are you trying to solve? Most people have a hard time answering that question succinctly. What's your market? And pricing strategy is really a combination of all the economics. You cannot avoid economics. There are economics involved. And you have competition, what they're doing, and you have what your customers are doing. And where they intersect is what you do to enable, I call them price enablers, is what you do to enable and inhibit adoption. So therefore, we came out just recently, in recent years, a lot of new pricing methods, right? Anywhere from dynamic pricing, drip pricing, subscription pricing, installment pricing, software as service pricing. We have all these different kinds of pricing methods. And my take of this is within the next 5 to 10 years, pricing is going to change dramatically because of technology. Not because we have AI and it's going to help us know exactly how much Drew wants this product, how much Jeremy wants this product. No. It is because you have ways for the company to know how to use the product. And I can give more service and I can customize my pricing for you. And I can justify it. So if you have IoT, I know exactly how you use the product. I can send you your supplies. I can have a specialized maintenance program, all of those stuff. And it's going to change the way you can price things. There are some significant interactions between what you do economically and what your competition are doing. So then what happens is everything is a game theoretical situation where who blinks first. In most developed countries of the world, we cannot control pricing, but we can signal. And very few people use prices to signal and do it correctly. And then it's all about the differentials. One of the things, I just spent a one-day workshop in Atlanta talking about managing price perceptions. So the whole day was on how much of a difference makes the difference. Because we assume, for some reason, everybody thinks if I just move the number from 29 to 28, everybody notices the difference. Really? All the suppliers think it makes the difference. Do buyers think it's a difference? Do you care? If a product went from 28 to 29, for example, it's not enough for you to care, right? So the question is, how much of a difference makes a difference? And there's a whole science behind it. So price, what is really in a price? A price is a stimulus. And we don't think about that enough. Price is the stimulus, just like any other physical stimulus. It's like sound, it's like light. That's why we use feeling words for price, right? When was the last time you heard somebody say, this price is really hot? In fact, a few years ago, I like to tell this joke, because my daughter was only 9 at the time, and we were at Brussels airport, and she said, Mom! And I go, what? I turn around, she goes, what makes the price sexy? Because there was a huge sign that says, sexy prices. And she said, yeah, this 9-year-old goes, Mom, what makes the price sexy? Something that makes the price sexy. But we use feeling words. Retailers have learned to use feeling words for prices because we know it elicits emotion. We react to prices just like any other stimulus. Prices are indicators. They're indicators of quality and indicators of position, market position. So next time you put a price up, you need to ask yourself, what story are you telling? How you price tells a story. about who you are, what the product is. How are you positioning? What is the quality? In every language I try to analyze, whether it's Chinese, Indian, Japanese, Korean, English, French, German, actually recently I asked a Russian person as well, in every language there's a correlation between price and quality. You pay what you get, you don't pay for a lemon, I mean all these things that we say in different languages, right? So we believe there's a correlation with price and quality. So price is an indicator. Price is also a signal. When you put a price or how you price something on a product, whether it's on your website, on a catalog, on the shelf, you are signaling to your buyer or potential buyer, this is what you're going to charge. And then there are cues. What's the difference between a signal and a cue? Well, come on, you guys are all scientists.
I would say a cue would elicit, or it's intended to elicit a response from the buyer.
Yes and no. Yes.
The signal is something evident, and the cue is something that you have to pay more attention in order to recognize it.
Almost. So I'll tell you what the difference between a signal and a cue is. My daughter comes to my room and says, "Mom, I'm going to bed. Good night. Love ya." She goes away. That's a signal. "Mom, I'm going to bed." That's a message intended for me to hear. 1:30 in the morning, I get out to the living room. I see a liberal light under the door. She didn't want me to know this, but I saw the cue. She's still awake. The kid is awake. That's not intended for me. So when you price something, you need to understand that the price for your product is the signal for your buyer. But all the peripheral prices, whether it is your prices on your website of other products or products within the same product line or outside somewhere next to your competition's prices, those are cues. They will affect how people think of your price. You don't exist in a vacuum. So you put your product and your price next to something that is very pricey. People expect this to be higher. If you put it next to something that is less pricey, people will think this should be less. Pricing is contextual. It's always contextual. It's where you are, how you position it, under what context you're selling this.
So where are you getting those definitions from? But if I go to the dictionary, I don't think I'm going to really be able to find distinctions.
Signals and cues, it's from biology.
Okay.
So if you go look at signals is when an animal goes to its herd and says, "Ah!" and then the whole herd runs, that's a signal. But if an animal sees that there are footsteps of a predator around the corner and then starts running, that is a cue. That's not intended for the animal to see. That's where it came from.
So I think the distinction is a signal is something that's sent. A cue is something that's received.
When you receive a signal as well, a signal is intended for you to receive it. A cue is not intended for you.
Well, so for instance, water signals to you before you bed. You notice the light on your door. You're receiving that.
Well, I also received her signal. She gave it to me, I received it. It's just the cue wasn't intended for me. She didn't intend for me to see it. So the cue's not intended. So when you put your product out there with a price, everything in the periphery, everything in the environment is not intended for your product's buyers. But those become cues for your buyers. You don't exist in a vacuum. So, it tells you how old I am. I put up the slide, and when people don't laugh, I go, okay, people are missing. Yoga, right? Tactics do not strategy. I don't know how many people have told me, we have a strategy. We have companies, we have a strategy. And I look at it, it's all these combination of tactics. It's not a strategy, you don't have a strategy. What's the difference between a strategy and a set of tactics?
Strategy is more long-term, tactics are short-term.
Well, yes, but if strategy is long-term and tactics are short-term, then tactics do make strategy, right?
Tactics support strategy.
Yeah, they do. But what's actually the problem?
They may have different objectives.
They may have different objectives, but yeah, but you got short-term objectives and long-term objectives, right? The difference is strategy, you're supposed to see where you're going. That's the whole point about developing a strategic plan, right? You have to have the end goal, like you play a football game. You know what is that end goal. That's your, whatever you do in your tactical moves or whatever, you decide to go this way or that way, that's the strategy. All your tactical moves are supporting that strategy. You could have a lot of technical moves that don't support one strategy if you don't know what your end goal is. So,
strategy would include things like ends, ways, and tactics. Might not include those things. Those are all at the lower level.
right, but tactics would support a strategy if you have a strategy. If you don't have a strategy, your tactics won't support a strategy, you're just moving. You're just reacting. Tactics are more reactive usually. Strategy is more proactive. But the real difference is strategy has an end goal. And I don't know how many companies I've talked to that think they have a pricing strategy, or think they have a corporate strategy for that matter, and they have no strategy. They're just surviving. I'm just going to move this. So pricing is really marketing and strategy. And the reason, I just didn't want these words, but the reality is pricing has a lot, if not everything, to do with the buyer. But we don't think like that. We always say, all my customers come to me and say, we have something to sell, how do I price it? The question isn't how you're going to price it, how much are the buyers going to pay for it? On that note, when they pay for something, is that the price? You know this better than me. You are on technology, right?
Not necessarily, because you may price something, and there may be a negotiation in the actual sale that results in a different exchange of cash, where
Okay, so you're talking the difference between list price and transaction price, right? And there's also list price, transaction price, and pocket price. And when you go down the whole waterfall where you lose also some margins because you support the distribution and all of that, and commissions and year-end rebates and all of that. But that's a separate issue. You always have that problem. What I'm trying to get at is when you buy something, is the price you pay the total cost of your adoption?
You get tax.
Oh, okay, you get tax. So that's, you know, the Uncle Sam wants something, so you got some extra something.
Well, I'll give you a good example. I bought my cable, and I had to go out and buy all new USB-C cables. That was not built into the phone. An extra several $100s.
Several hundred? Jeez. Yeah,
Well,
so,
I got 10 cables, so you can always find them.
so then your total cost of adoption is a lot higher because you've got all these peripherals. But something as simple as buying a bag of rice is a lot more. Your total cost of adoption, of owning that bag of rice, is a lot more than the price you pay. You have to drive to the store, you have to lift it and put it in your car, you have to take it home, you have to find a place to put it. All of that is a cost of adoption. I mean, if there's zero cost of adoption, what it means is that you pay for your rice and it miraculously appears. And when you want to scoop, you scoop it into your rice cooker. Otherwise, you have cost of adoption. So when you really think of pricing something, you have to think of the total cost of adoption. In other words, how much are you inconveniencing your buyer? It's not that simple, right? So I'll give you an example. A few years ago, and these folks have heard the story before, but a few years ago, the NUS incubation team, the incubation center people came to me and said, we got a problem we don't understand. I said, okay, I'll try. So it was this company, a little company at NUS, these PhD students, I'm sure it sounds familiar to you folks. So these PhD students came up with I don't even know what it is, something that, I think it's a software, some sort of capability thing, that if you buy and do whatever installation on the back end, then your website can have a chat function. So they got seed money and they got some venture capital investment, so they got this thing going. And then they started selling it for free. It's a freemium kind of thing. And it really didn't take off very well. So then they burned through all their original seed money and whatever funding they got, and they decided if they wanted to survive, they have to charge a little. So they added a little something that was insignificant and started charging it. And for some odd reason, this thing started selling like crazy. And then even the free version, which had one little insignificant less feature, started selling as well. And they don't understand it. I said, it's easy, it's very simple. Tell me why.
Isn't it
Presumption
value?
of increased quality.
So there's presumption of increased quality, that's one. What else?
The idea is like,
It's more convenient because there's no ads.
Or there was no ads to start with, it's free.
I think it's like charging to give away a puppy. You always charge an adoption fee because the person is then invested in what they do.
Absolutely. Your total cost of adoption is never zero, right? So you have a website and you decide, I'm going to get this free thing. Your engineers have to spend time working on it. You have to do whatever installation. You have to put it all together. You have to try it, make sure it works. Now the thing is launched. What if it goes wrong? You have nobody to call. This darn thing is free. What if this company goes out of business? It's frightening. Your risk is very high. That's a cost. Your risk is the cost. Now, if they start charging people, if somebody is charging somebody, then I go, well, this company is a legitimate commercial concern. They have a help desk. Those guys can call if there's a problem. They're probably not going to go out of business. I'll probably be fine. So the premium version also sold. Long and short of it, once they started charging, this company made so much money, they sold it to a Silicon Valley company, we can't go to school. And these 3 PhD kids are all multimillionaires now. Vacationing somewhere in the Caribbean, I'm sure. But I made a lot of money.
So what is NUS?
National University of Singapore.
Ah,
So marketing is pricing is really both marketing and strategy. And we don't think of it as such, but it's not as simple as putting a number on something. And it doesn't come like that. If you don't have a strategy, you don't know what you're doing. So here's one. It says, you can't read it, so I'll read it for you. It says, this is one of my favorite cartoons. Our marketing surveys tell us that the runners think there is a direct relationship between the complexity of a shoe and its value. Thus, the Footloom ZX783 Alpha, 4 separate lacing systems, including one across the heel, 3 interdependent strip fasteners, 2 inflation chambers, interchangeable track designs, and a digital timer. When we sold it at $39.95, the shoe was a dismal failure. When we sold it at $400, we couldn't make them fast enough. Now this is a joke from a cartoonist, but there's a lot of truth in that. Why? Why was it selling so fast and so when they upped the price? Now here's a dramatic increase, but still, I'm assuming it's right. Why?
Prestige pricing.
Yeah. So everybody wants prestige? maybe. But if they couldn't make it fast enough, it's more a mass product than a luxury product. Why?
One of the few things. The fact that you priced it, you have a value associated with $40 shoe, and it's not very good, so $40 shoes will fall apart.
Right, you're right. What we don't think about is communication and marketing is all about making sense. $40 with all those features, it doesn't make sense. So it must be a lemon. It must be a joke. All these features must not be good. 400, then it makes sense. It makes sense because you've got all these things thrown into it. It makes sense that it's expensive.
But now there's another component of this. If your product has long-term legs, it's where over time it's going to get limitations. So if it doesn't meet the $400 expectation, that will get out quicker.
Exactly.
So,
But it's not gonna, what you could do, what I'm trying to argue is at the beginning you price high and then you go down the hill. You don't want to go 40 and then nobody will, it doesn't make sense to anybody and there's nowhere to go. You cannot go up, but you can go down. You can launch it at 400 and then over time lower it to 200 even.
so a classic example, cell phone, smartphone. You always come out and then you start getting decline in price.
Yeah. Theoretically, with learning curve, with more adoption of the mass market, prices will always go down. It makes better sense to go down. Going up doesn't make sense.
Well, and of course, you also have the time marching on, you have other innovations that replace your products.
So let's, yes. So the one point I want to emphasize is marketing is all about, and communicating a message, whether with your description of your product or with putting up a number or the way you price, it's all about resonance. Whether or not people can understand it and you create resonance. Anything that doesn't make sense, the market are not going to accept it. So I came up with, about 4 years ago, I was working with a group of students on a project. And then it was about pricing a consumer product. And I can't tell you which one, but it's a cosmetics company. And they wanted to see how much they can price something, what is the acceptable range of something that's brand new in the market. And I decided to have them try something. Now I'm trying to get somebody to write a software on it. It's called I call it the price resonance test. And all you are doing is trying to figure out, given all the descriptions you have, and where are you going to sell it, you put the potential buyers, the group of people that represent your segment, through this whole exercise, and then you test them on the price. So you have to go yay, nay, yay, nay, yay, nay, yay, nay. You randomly throw these prices at them. And you'll find that at the really high prices that don't make sense, people are very quick no's. At prices where they think it makes sense, given all your description, the yeses are very short. And then everywhere that they have to think about it, it takes them much longer to come up with a yes or no. So it clumps a group of people. So we've done this on, now I'm using it on consulting projects as well and student projects. So we've tested it so many times. I've done it maybe 20 times on real products, whether it's new innovative products or industrial products or consumer products. If you test it on people, you'll find that given your description, given where you're going to sell it, how you're going to sell it, it's all relative, right? If you sell something in the flea market, it's very different than if you put something in regional markets. Same product. So given the contextual information, you can test them, and you'll find that most people, they will think something makes sense around a very narrow band.
You could also apply something like that to selling real estate.
Why?
Sell the real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, on that front, I teach science perception, of price perception. So on real estate is, if a really good salesperson tries to take you to buy a piece of property, a house, an apartment or something, what is the first thing you tell the person? You know, your criteria and what else?
Or price.
Your price range, right? Yeah, what is your range of prices that you want? Now, given your range, if the salesperson is really good, what would the salesperson do? Take you to go see real estate within that range?
You're going to probably take a little bit above, a little bit below, so you understand the implications of the range you selected.
So which one do you start with?
Start with higher.
Why?
Well, because you're going to see higher quality.
And?
But maybe people more realistic people aren't.
Maybe. So I actually bought my one house. Go ahead.
Because the agent knows that you're looking for a bargain. And
Yeah.
when he asks you what's your price range, you're going to say something lower than you probably could do if you really wanted to.
That too. Yes?
At the higher, if you start with the higher end, you should to the higher value.
Absolutely. I actually had an incredible sales lady when I tried to buy a house in Champaign. I laughed the whole time. I told her, it is eons ago, I told her that the range that I wanted to consider a house, I think at the time was 200 to 250 grand. That's all I wanted to think about. I said, I can't go over 250. I can't remember 250, 280, something like that. And she picked me up and she said, I have to go by this house to pick up a key. Do you mind riding? I said, sure. Curiosity kills the cat, right? So we're parking in front of this grand house that's, I can't remember, 650,000 or something crazy. And then I wait for you here. She goes, oh, come on, come see it, right? So I went in to see the house with her, had a tour of a $650,000 house. And then she goes, well, now let's go see the houses that I arranged you to see. So the next one she took me was something right around 150,000. Oh, 200,000 or something like that. I remember I walked in and go, do I have to live in this dump? Now I'm convincing myself, well, maybe I can buy a little better, maybe a little better, right? So then you start justifying to yourself, well, maybe 270, you know, because then compared to 650, the 200,000 is a dump. And you're like, I don't want to live in the dump. Do I have to live in the dump? So you're trying to convince yourself. Those are all cues. She's throwing all sorts of cues to me. And then I'm just going, oh, and you get totally affected.
Yeah, so I've bought like 5 different houses in my life. Every time I bought a house, I paid more than my original rate because I just didn't understand the market.
Well, maybe that, but maybe also you have really good salespeople. They're trying to show you.
I had done an evaluation of my checkbook. My checkbook said this was my banking range.
Yeah, but we stretch a little. We always stretch, especially if you say, well, I can only pay $250,000, but every month the difference is only maybe $200, maybe $200, and then $200 becomes $250. So a lot of that gets influenced by how we look at things. All I'm trying to say is what you really want to do, and there's a whole way to look at this way beyond what we can talk about today, is you really want to look carefully at what kind of value you are delivering to your buyer. Not from your point of view, from their point of view. What value are you providing for them? And how do you establish, nurture, and maintain that perception of value? It's not just that you did your campaign, you convince them, you talk about it, you create a good product, and you throw it out there, and it lives on its own. The question is, how do you maintain it? How do you nurture it? So pricing is really an art and a science. It's not, there's a lot of science behind it. Psychophysics, economics, behavioral economics, there are a lot of science behind it. And there's data analytics. Now we're using artificial intelligence. A good friend of mine is an artificial intelligence expert at one of the largest pricing software companies, and they're trying to help you find out what combinations of products would give you the best bundle. But that's really given historical data. There's no way they can create something. Given your scenario, you are creating a new product. How do you find a way to conceptualize and measure the value you're providing to the customer? That's really at the heart of it. How do you conceptualize and measure the value? And that requires knowing your customers. So Peter Drucker is a management guru. He likes to say the customer rarely pays what the company thinks it is selling. You're selling the customer something, but the customer doesn't think he's buying that. He's buying something else. So you have to figure out from their point of view, what are they buying? We talk about customers' willingness to pay. What determines customers' willingness to pay? Let me tell you, it's not affordability. It's not. You can always make something affordable. You can do installments, you can lease it, you can rent it, you can do subscription, you can do all sorts of weird stuff. What determines customers' willingness to pay is a function of what you tell them and what is in the quality of the product. How do you position it? If they think or they believe and then you actually deliver whatever solution it is to whatever problem they have, then you've established the value.
But another way to say that is, what is the customer, what's going to be based on the customer's perceived value of what he finds.
Oh, absolutely. It's all about perceived value. But how does a customer form perception of value?
Well, he's going to do something like the product.
But what he does with the product has a lot to do with how you teach the customer to use the product. You don't make something and throw it out there and go, okay, bye. You're not doing your job. You show the customer how to use the product, you learn from the customer what the customer's problem is, and you try to help your customer solve his or her problem. And in the process, you help the customer establish the perception of value. So the key is trying to find a way to work from the customer backwards. I think that's it. That's all I have for today. Any questions?
I do have a question. So there may be, if you have a complex product, and you are trying to understand how the customer's going to use it, you may have prototypes. And so how does prototype pricing go into play? Are you going to sell them something that you know is less, but then the next iteration you can have more confidence in? And so you adjust pricing version 2.
Absolutely. So your prototype is version 1. And your prototype, it depends on whether your prototype has glitches, right? If your customer believes the prototype is just using them to test it, then yes, you just price them. There's prototype pricing. You don't price it like a regular product because it's a prototype testing is a co-creation process. So you work with your customer. So that's a total different pricing method than pricing a product itself.